Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
Packers doing a little joint practicing yesterday against the Colts. Sounds like the defense won the day. Offense missing a lot of starters. So it looks like they were struggling a little bit, showing their youth a little bit. But game 2 now coming up for this preseason for the Packers on Saturday against the Colts. Who are the players that we're going to be paying attention to the most? If you had to put your scouting cap on, all right, you got to put your scouting cap on. Who are you going to be paying attention to the most? Here are the players that I will have my particular eye on. I'll start on the offensive side. Offensive line. Got to shore up the pre-snap penalties, for one. I mean, if we were just kind of talking about just a general sense, definitely that. Definitely the holding penalties. I mean, the flag fest, the laundry day that it was on Saturday, unacceptable. Unacceptable. So that's just kind of the general thing on there. Specifically player-wise, I think there's a lot to look at. Does Jordan Morgan and Anthony Belton have another solid performance? Those two, second-year guy Morgan, Anthony Belton, the rookie second-round pick, who had good performances against the Jets in preseason game number 1. Does that continue? Does that continue against the Colts tomorrow? If Jordan Morgan goes out there and puts out another really good performance, I think we've got ourselves, well, what we do right now, but it gets really more intriguing and interesting in that left tackle position battle between him and Walker, especially since Walker's been missing some time. Belton's not going to be a starter at right tackle, obviously, with Zach Tom, but he becomes a really, really intriguing piece. I don't know where his future position potentially could be. He is going to be a starter at some point. I think you're a second-round pick. They probably view you as a starter at some point. Now, maybe could it be a future left tackle and Morgan slides inside? Possibly. But just to be able to have that guy, that depth there would be incredibly important. And then speaking of the depth, it's the other guys. It's the Jacob Monks. It's the Donovan Jennings, Are we going to see some better performances from those guys? And who's going to kind of go into that final preseason game next week with a little bit of an edge, with a little bit of an advantage to win a job as a depth piece on that offensive line? So gave you a couple names who I'm looking at, but also you look at the offensive line overall, especially the backups. Who is going to emerge from this game? Maybe a guy that's like on that edge, on that bubble. Who is going to emerge from this game and maybe head into the final preseason game next week with a little bit of a lead, a little bit of advantage to make that team? Offensively, I'm looking at 2 receivers specifically in this thing. Mecole Hardman and Malik Heath. Those 2 specifically. I still think Mecole Hardman has a slight advantage over Malik Heath. Veteran, special teams, even though he had the miscue last week. But those 2 should get plenty of opportunities in this game, considering Jane Reed's not going to be playing. I don't know about Romeo Doubs. It's not too serious. I mean, Matt LaFleur yesterday thought he was going to practice, but then wasn't going to, so maybe they hold him out. Don't know about Dontavian Wicks at this point. But assuming those guys are all out, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for Malik Heath and Mecole Hardman to have bounce-back games from last Saturday. Will one of those guys take the lead going into that final preseason game? Or will they solidify their spot? Like I feel like if Mecole Hardman goes out and has a spectacular game on Saturday, that maybe he locks up that final wide receiver spot. But what if Malik Heath goes out there and has himself a day? Then it becomes really interesting going into that final game. But there's going to be plenty of opportunities for some of these other receivers. to kind of showcase what they've got, maybe to earn a job on the practice squad, maybe to earn a job elsewhere. Because of these receivers all banged up right now for Green Bay, and they're minor injuries. It sounds like everybody's going to be back for week 1. So I don't want anybody overreacting. Okay. But I look at those guys having opportunities there. Same with the running backs. You know, how is that going to play out 2 through 3? I shouldn't say 2 through 3. I should just say 2 and 3. Outside of Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd, he's going to be a part of it in there too. So maybe it's for that final spot of Chris Brooks. You know, these other guys. That's a group that's also been banged up with some injuries. Can we see a surprise performance from a running back? How many times have we seen it? I mean, Emmanuel Wilson is the perfect example of having a really good preseason and making the roster. Is it going to be one of those running backs that maybe we don't know a whole lot about or just know a name? But all of a sudden, he's going to have a fantastic game on Saturday and maybe puts himself in position to maybe win a job come next week. Or is that just that mountain's too high to climb and overcome at this point? But running back's going to be an interesting one there too because, again, I'm assuming the top 2 are locked. Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd. Right? Those are locked. But could we see Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks, anybody else maybe try to take the lead in that 3rd spot heading into next weekend? That's why I feel like I don't want to overhype the second preseason game, but the fact that we only have 3 games now, I feel like the second preseason game is just naturally more important now because this is an opportunity for guys who are maybe on that roster bubble to have themselves. If they have a fantastic game, they're heading into that final game next weekend, that final impression, that final job interview, really. They're entering that final week with maybe a little bit of a lead, a little bit of an edge, an advantage. If a guy has an awful game coming up tomorrow and they're on that bubble, then the pressures might be a little bit more on for them to have a fantastic game in that 3rd and final preseason game. So game 2 is important in the sense for these guys who are fighting for spots. They've got to have a good performance and ride that momentum in game 3. I think we all want to see better performances from, Malik Willis, Sean Clifford, the backup quarterback positions too. But, we know Malik is going to be the number 2 guy. And whoever that 3rd quarterback is going to be, whether it's Sean or Taylor, probably going to be on the practice squad. Defensively, I'm looking at the defensive line. I'm looking at the guys like Stackhouse, Sorrell, the rookies, those 2, Warren Brinson. I want to see those 3. Can those 3 push guys like a Colby Wooden or a Carl Brooks or a Brenton Cox Jr. potentially for a job? You go to Packers.com. You look at the depth chart. Brenton Cox Jr. is still listed as the 2 behind Rashawn Gary. Carl Brooks is listed right behind Kenny Clark. Colby Wooden's listed right behind Devontae Wyatt. But don't take the depth charts, too serious for this time of year. I'm looking at the Sorrells and the Stackhouse and the Brinsons, guys who had some solid performances in week 1. Can they carry that over in 2 and really put the pressure on a guy maybe like a Colby Wooden? Or maybe can Baron Sorrell put the pressure on a guy like a Brenton Cox Jr. or a Kiki Enagbare? Had a solid game 1. What if he goes out there and balls out against the Colts? If I'm a guy like Brenton Cox Jr. and I have a quiet game 2 and I'm like, ooh, maybe I'm a little bit nervous. So I'm looking at those younger defensive lineman players too. Can they carry? Because it was pretty much game 1. Overall, the defensive line, I did think as a unit played that great, but when you look at individual performances, there was some solid performance individually. Can they carry that over? And then on the flip side, it's kind of the same with the linebackers. Isaiah Simmons. Kind of an up and down performance against the Jets. I want to see Isaiah Simmons flying around the field and making some plays. We know he's got the athleticism. I want to see him flying around and making some plays on the defensive side. I want to see him hitting the hole hard, reading and reacting. Hopper, I thought, had some nice moments in that Jets game. He's a guy who's on the bubble. And you look at the linebacker group, McDuffie's going to make the team, Quay Walker's going to make the team, Edgerrin Cooper's going to make the team. After that, the question is, how many more linebackers do you keep? You know, Welch might have the advantage of being a very solid special teams player. Hopper was a third-round pick last year. Simmons, we know, a reclamation project, former first-rounder. Could they keep all three of those? Sure, I guess they could. Will they? I don't know. But I'm looking at Hopper. I'm looking at Welch. I'm looking at Isaiah Simmons. Those three guys. A couple of them are going to have to go into this game and have themselves some fantastic performances and go into next weekend with maybe a little bit of that lead. Same with kind of the same story with some of the corners and the safeties here too. Bo Melton, can he do it? Can he make this team as a corner? Can he go out there and have himself a game? He's going to get plenty of opportunities. He's going to get I would imagine he's going to get a ton of snaps. Kalen King had a good game last week against the Jets. If he puts together another good game against the Colts, I think he's in a really good spot to make this team. But then you're looking at others. How is it going to work out for Micah Robinson, for Kamal Hayden? What about those guys? Safety-wise, we know Xavier McKinney's not playing. Zane Anderson's hurt. This is an opportunity for Oladapo and an Omar Brown. And Omar Brown, who was the talk of family night. Didn't hear his name a whole lot, though, in the preseason game against the Jets. Almost had a sweet pick on the sideline, on a diving pick. But with Zane Anderson out, it's an opportunity for Oladapo and Brown to maybe okay, my time now. I got to show that I'm worthy of a job. And some of that might come on special teams play too. So there's actually quite a few. When you look at this, there's quite a few players, positions that you're looking at for this game 2 coming up tomorrow night or tomorrow. And I think it's a big game 2 in the importance of guys heading into that final game next weekend, making good impressions on the front office and the coaching staff, where they go into, that week 3, that preseason game number 3, maybe kind of like where the arrow is trending upward, or maybe they got that slight lead over the next guy. They have a poor performance tomorrow, they're going to have to really have the best game of their lives coming up next weekend. That's why this is such an intriguing, important game for a lot of guys. Not everybody, of course. But for some of these guys, it's an opportunity for them to maybe solidify their roster spot or really kind of take that lead and be one step closer to making that team. So a lot of stuff to kind of be paying attention to coming up tomorrow, and a lot of players to be paying attention to too.